Chapter 4473. This was a Buddhist land, so naturally there would not be any danger. There are not many people in the peach forest, so it was very quiet, so they let the children play on their own. Sister Yuer, Schwerer, Brother Bowen, let's play hide and seek. Bo Ching suggested excitedly. Okay, but I'm not playing, I want to hide. Yuer smiled and pulled Mooch in beside her. Brother, come play too. After saying that, she looked around and saw that her brother was not far away. She shouted, Big brother, do you want to play? Not playing, you guys play. Just don't run too far. Out, but did not forget to remind them. Okay, Yuer, and nodded obediently and pulled her brother along as she ran, shouting, Brother Bowen, quickly take Sister Schwer to hide. Then hurry up, I'm going to open my eyes when I count to 10. Bo Ching covered his eyes with both hands and leaned against the peach tree as he counted loudly. 1, 2, 3. Yuer pulled Moochin along and said in a soft voice, Brother, don't pull a long face. Don't play with Brother Bo Ching, Sister Schwer, and Brother Bowen, they'll be sad. Moochun pursed his lips and said, They only know how to play. Too childish. Hearing these words, Yuer smiled and said, Big brother, we are all younger than them, but we're stronger than them. He raised his chin, looking proud and arrogant. That's because they're different from us. Yuer said with a smile and looked at the bigger peach tree. Brother, let's hide up there. There are more leaves. Brother Bo Ching definitely won't be able to find us. After saying that, she pulled her brother and lightly jumped onto the top of the peach tree. The two of them found a branch to sit on, and with the peach leaves as cover, Yuer picked 2 big peaches and wiped them on her body before handing one to Moochun. Moochun watched as she rubbed the peaches on her body. When her pink dress was stained with peaches, he frowned and lectured her like an older brother. Little sister, you're a girl. You can't always get dirty. As he spoke, he took out a handkerchief from his sleeve and helped her wipe off the peach hairs on her dress. It's okay. I'll go back and take a shower later. Yuer said indifferently. She took a bite of the peach and carefully looked around to see if Bo Ching had come looking for her. Unexpectedly, he didn't see Bo Ching. Instead, he saw a beautiful woman wiping her tears under a peach tree not far away. Yuer blinked her eyes, then pulling her brother's sleeve, she said, Big brother, there's an ant crying over there. Moochun glanced at her and said, Let her cry. It's none of our business. He held the peach but did not eat it. He just played with it in his hand. Yu ate the peach while watching but didn't say anything. She only listened to the soft, comforting words of the 2 maids. After the woman wiped away her tears, the 3 people who were originally standing there also walked over with light steps and stopped at the foot of the peach tree where they were. Madam, this peach tree is very lush and has many peaches. Why don't we pick some and bring them back for good luck? A maidservant said softly with a bamboo basket in her hand. Chapter 4474. They had been married for many years, but had not had a child all along. Even though the love between husband and wife was deep, it could not withstand the weight of time. Today, she had come here to make a wish, so she naturally hoped to have a good omen. She gathered her thoughts, and her gaze swept past those pink and tender peaches, and finally landed on a comparatively bigger peach. She reached out her hand and tiptoed, wanted to pluck it, but her fingertips faintly touched it, and she was unable to pluck it. After trying a few times, just when she was about to withdraw her hand, suddenly a pink and tender little hand stretched out from those lush leaves and plucked that peach and handed it over. For you. Yuer half lied down, and with a smile on her face, she looked at that beautiful woman who was blankly looking at her. Seeing that she did not speak, and also did not take it, as if she was startled, she again reached out her little hand and handed it over a few more times and shouted, For you, Peach. That madam came back to her senses and let out a low cry. She couldn't help but take a step back, but as if she had thought of something, she raised her head and looked, and just happened to see that smiling and delicate little face between the peach leaves. That pink and tender little face was exquisite and pure, and a pair of beautiful big eyes were looking at her with a smile. That pair of white and chubby little hands were holding a big peach and handing it over. At first glance, It was as if she had seen a peach fairy, causing her heart to involuntarily skip a beat. Peach fairy has appeared, that madam muttered, and unexpectedly directly knelt down, and her eyes were filled with pleasant surprise. Greetings, Peach Fairy. The two maids were also startled by this scene. They only saw that on top of that peach tree, there was a pink and delicate little girl who was looking at them with a smile on her face, and her hand was also holding a big peach. Immediately, seeing their madam kneeling down, they also promptly knelt down and did not dare to raise their head. There was no other reason, only because this peach tree was big and tall, and its leaves were lush, and peaches were piled up. It was basically not a tree that a child could climb up. And also, that pink and tender little face with a smile on her face was so delicate that it did not seem to belong to this world. And moreover, it was also inside this Buddhist peach forest, so it was as if Peach Fairy had descended. However, compared to them, Yor couldn't help blinking her eyes at this moment. She was somewhat surprised and also somewhat at a loss. She saw that this beautiful Annie couldn't pick the peaches, so she helped her pick them and handed them to her. Why did she kneel down and worship her? Mu-chun, who was sitting on the other side of the branch, glanced down and was a little speechless. Obviously, he did not expect these people to misunderstand. Although they were also immortals, they were not peach immortals. I'm not a peach immortal, Yor said with a beaming smile. Looking at them, she softly said with a smile, "Don't worship me. I won't grow up." When a madam heard this, she was startled for a moment. She carefully raised her head and saw that the little girl had already sat down, her feet dangling in the air. She was still holding the big peach in her hand, and beside her, the leaves were pushed aside. She also saw a boy in a white dress, and that boy also had an exquisite little face that was exactly the same as the little girl's. "We are playing hide and seek," Yor said with a smile. Then she could faintly hear Bo Ching's voice shouting in the peach forest. Chapter 4475. Before she could finish her words, she saw the little girl stretched out her little hand and handed over the peach. "For you." She looked at her in a daze, only to see a pure smile on the little girl's delicate face. Her pair of beautiful eyes were very lively. Wearing a pink little dress, she looked very cute in a small ball, which made her heart soften involuntarily. At the same time, she stretched out her hand to take the peach and said, "Come down. I'll carry you down." No, I'm playing hide and seek with brother." Or shook her head and retracted her hand. She was about to stand up and hide again when her foot slipped and her little body suddenly fell down. "Little sister," Mu-chan exclaimed and hurriedly stretched out his hand to catch her. But he didn't catch her. The madam, who was standing under the tree, saw the little girl fall and exclaimed in a low voice. She hurriedly reached out to catch her. However, the impact of falling from the tree was too great. Even though the madam caught her, she couldn't stand still. Her whole body fell down, but her hands tightly held the little girl in her arms. "Hiss, madam," the two maids exclaimed and hurriedly came forward. Yor blinked her eyes and looked at the madam who fell on the ground. She quickly got down from her and somewhat worriedly asked, "Aunt, how are you? Are you injured?" Mu-chan jumped down from the tree and stood beside Yor, looking at the madam. That madam smiled and said, "I'm fine." She rubbed her waist and felt some pain in her arm. Looking at her arm, she saw that the stone had cut her skin and a trace of blood was oozing out. "I'm bleeding." Yor somewhat blamed herself. "It's okay," the madam said with a smile. Looking at the two children in front of her, she only felt that they were very cute. She thought, if she also had two children like them, how good would that be? "Thank you." Mu-chan thanked her, knowing that if she didn't catch Yor, even if she didn't fall down, it would still be painful. "Whose children are you?" the madam asked the two children while sitting on the ground and letting the two maids tear a strip of cloth to help her bandage her wound. Yor tilted her head and thought for a while, then said, "My father and mother's children, ah? However, we couldn't find our parents, so we stayed at Uncle Ning's house." Hearing this, the madam was slightly startled. "Why can't we find father and mother?" Mu-chan tugged at Yor, motioning her not to say too much. "We have to go now. Saying that, he held Ur's hand and walked towards the road they came from. However, when they had walked more than 10 meters away, they suddenly heard a cry of surprise behind them, as well as the sound of sword chi. Mu Chun and Mu Yu immediately stopped and looked back. They saw several men in black coming out of nowhere and attacking the madam with swords. The two maidservants screamed for help, but one of them was killed by the men in black. The other one was protecting the madam and fleeing while shouting for help. Mu Chun exclaimed in shock because his sister, who was holding his hand, had broken free from his grasp and ran away. Almost without any hesitation, Yu rushed towards that madam. Her small figure moved lightly, and her speed was extremely fast. At the same time, she also shouted, "Brother, quickly call for people." Chapter 4476. Madam, that maidservant cried out in alarm. She was so scared that her body trembled, but she couldn't do anything. She could only stare at that sword with a pale face. The madam was also shocked. She was so shocked that she couldn't even scream. Just when she thought she was going to die, she saw a small figure standing in front of her. The small figure held a dagger and blocked the long sword that was coming at her. Clang! Only a crisp clang sound was heard. That sword was unexpectedly unable to advance any further. Then, seeing this, the other black-robed men sternly shouted, "Kill them!" After the angry shout, several swords attacked Yu and that madam. At this time, a young and tender voice containing anger was heard, courting death. Seeing those black-robed men holding swords against his sister, Mu Chun immediately shouted angrily. Pulling out a dagger, he directly attacked the black-robed man at the front. The dagger carried a trace of spiritual aura. With a whoosh, it streaked across the air, and like a sharp arrow, it pierced the neck of a black-robed man. And that black-robed man who had raised his sword and was about to slash down groaned. His body stiffened in an instant, and the sword in his hand didn't fall for a long time. His eyes were wide open in horror, and he stared straight ahead as if he didn't dare to believe that the dagger that killed him actually flew out from the hands of a 3- or 4-year-old child and accurately hit his vital point. Seeing this, those black-robed men were startled and looked in that direction. But when they saw that it was only a 3- or 4-year-old boy, they couldn't help but get angry and shouted, "Kill them! End this quickly!" How? Came over after hearing the voice. His figure flitted through the peach trees. Before he reached Yu, and Mu Chen's side, he saw those black-robed men making killing moves. After glancing at those black-robed men, his heart slightly moved. 2 streams of chi shot out from his hand, knocking that madam and maidservant unconscious. "Big brother." Yu turned her head and saw her big brother coming over. "Chun Yu, these people are for you to practice." As Hauer spoke, his indifferent gaze swept past the men in black. He did not make a move and chose to let Mu Chun and Mu Yu deal with them. After cultivating for so long, they had yet to experience actual combat. It was just a few black-robed men, so they could use them to practice their skills and courage. The 2 of them were startled for a moment, but they immediately understood what he meant, so they responded. Yu held the dagger and circulated the spiritual power within her body, and the next moment, she stepped forward. Mu Chun also rushed forward and removed the dagger from the black-clothed man's chest. Spirit force surged in his palm, and killing intent overflowed from his eyes. The 2 of them had been cultivating for a long time and were very proficient in both their movement techniques and martial skills. However, they had very few opportunities to fight. This time, after hearing their big brother's words, the aura of the 2 small figures changed the moment their spiritual energy aura surged. Unlike their usual appearances, at this moment, both their bodies and their eyes were filled with killing intent. Their attacks were swift and fierce, without the slightest bit of hesitation. In their hearts, they always remembered that there was no need to show mercy to those who wanted to take their lives. Chapter 4477. When he was young, his parents taught him personally, telling him that they could not always be by his side to protect him. Only when he became stronger and had the ability to protect himself could they be at ease. And now, he and his younger brother and sister were stranded here. He had also been personally teaching them to cultivate so that they could have the ability to protect themselves, just like how his parents taught him in the past. After a few breaths of time, the forest returned to calm again. On the ground, several corpses were lying there, and the two little people, standing in the middle of the corpses, were seriously wiping the blood-stained daggers in their hands. Pan Ning had rushed over after hearing the commotion. However, he did not expect to see such a scene when he arrived. What happened? Are you all right? Pan Ning's face changed and quickly stepped forward. He saw her standing on the side and the two little ones standing beside the woman who had fallen on the ground. Uncle Ning, we are fine, Yu said, looking at the corpses on the ground and slightly lowering her head. Mu Chun looked at the corpses with a taut face. His eyes were calm, as if those people were not killed by him. Pan Ning stepped forward to check. His brows furrowed slightly, and his face was solemn. He said, "Did the Death Warriors sneak into a peaceful place of Buddhism?" Looking at the dead Death Warriors, he looked at the children with a complicated expression. Apart from them, there was no one else here. Therefore, he knew very well who killed these men of sacrifice. They wanted to kill this ant and then wanted to kill us, so we killed them. Yu whispered, somewhat uneasily grabbing the corner of her clothes. Pan Ning sighed softly and said, "Don't be afraid. It's all right." He patted Yu's little head, but when he spoke, he felt strange. These children even dared to kill Death Warriors. Why would they be afraid? I tell you, if someone asks later, you can say that these people were killed by me. As for the rest, don't say a word. Pan Ning instructed, knowing that this matter was not so simple. The three responded and looked at him. However, take them to Bowen and the others first, and then take them back to the courtyard to rest. Pan Ning said, glancing at 17 from the corner of his eye. All right, replied before leading his younger siblings away. Young Master Hao, young Master Chun, Miss Yu. When 17 saw them, she quickly bowed. Seeing that they had left, she quickly went to Pan Ning's side. Second young master, what happened? He looked at the woman and the corpses on the ground in astonishment. We'll talk about it later. Now, you go to the front and find the Master Abbot and ask him to come over. Pan Ning instructed. Yes, 17 replied and quickly left. Pan Ning stepped forward and saw that the woman and her maidservant had only fainted. He first pinched the woman's Renjong acupoint, and the woman slowly regained consciousness. Greetings, Madam Ho. Pan Ning bowed and took 3 steps back. The madam rubbed her forehead and opened her eyes. When she saw the corpse in front of her, she thought of what had happened and her face paled. She then seemed to have thought of something and looked around, but the 2 children were gone. Where are the 2 children? She asked anxiously. They're fine. Madam, you don't have to worry. Pan Ning said. Chapter 4478. Yes, Pan Ning replied. He looked at her and said, Madam, what happened here just now? On the other side, the abbot and Pan Hong were playing chess when they saw a young monk rushing in with 17. Abbot, it's not good. This benefactor said that there was an assassin in the back of the mountain and someone died. The young monk hurriedly said, Eldest young master, Master Abbot. 17 looked at the 2 and hurriedly bowed. Pan Hong frowned and looked at 17. He asked what happened. Why would an assassin sneak into a Buddhist place? Eldest young master, Master Abbot, it was the second young master who asked me to invite you 2 over. I don't know anything else. The abbot stood up and said someone died in a Buddhist place. It's not a small matter. I'll go and take a look. Eldest young master, don't worry. You can follow me later. As soon as he finished speaking, he quickly left with the young monk. Are the children all right? Pan Hong asked. The young masters and young ladies are all fine. The second young master is not injured. Eldest young master, you don't have to worry. 17 said and led the way. Behind them, the guards pushed the wheelchair and followed. When they arrived at the peach forest, the abbot, Pan Ning, and the madam had already talked for a while. The abbot, who understood the situation, said softly, Amit Ba, everyone must be frightened. Please go back and rest. I'll take care of things here. Thank you, Master Abbot. The madam bowed slightly and thanked Pan Ning. I really have to thank the second young master today. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid I wouldn't have survived today. Why go back? I'll definitely thank you with a generous gift. Madam Ho, you're too polite, Pan Ning hurriedly said. The Ho madam bowed again and left with the help of the pale-faced servant girl. These are men of sacrifice. Pan Hong glanced at the corpses on the ground and knew that these were not ordinary assassins, but men of sacrifice. They came for the madam. I just happened to meet them. Pan Ning said, Master, I'll leave the things here to you. We'll go back first. The abbot clasped his hands together and bowed slightly. After watching them leave, he looked at the corpses on the ground, and a thoughtful look flashed through his wise eyes when they arrived at the courtyard. Pan Hong entered the side room and called out to Pan Ning, who was about to enter the room, Come with me. Pan Ning's footsteps paused. He felt a little helpless. He knew that other people might believe those words, but his big brother definitely wouldn't. After entering the room, Pan Ning closed the door behind him. 2 bodyguards stood outside and looked at his big brother. He then asked, Big brother, why did you call for me? Pan Hong poured a cup of tea and said, Don't you think you should tell me about it? With your skills, how could you deal with a few dark guards alone without any injuries? Pan Ning remained silent, not knowing what to say. Pan Hong drank a cup of water and said, Ever since you brought Hao and the other 2 back, you've been hiding more and more things from us. You know that we're a family. Even if there's something you can't tell outsiders, can't you tell us? If this continues, have you ever thought that one day you won't be able to protect them at all? Chapter 4479. Hearing this, Pan Hong was shocked. What was the identity of the 3 children? How could they make him guard their identity and not mention a word? In that case, I'll only ask you one thing. At that time, I was diagnosed by the imperial physician and the doctor that I would not live past that night, but I survived. Was it Hao and the others who saved me? This question had been hidden in his heart for a long time. He did not believe those words that were said to the outside world, but he knew that since Pan Ning said those words, it must be to cover up some truth. Therefore, he guessed that his survival had something to do with Hao and the others. However, even if he guessed in his heart, even he was not willing to believe it. After all, the 3 of them were only children. Pan Ning looked at him for a long time, then took a deep breath and replied, Yes. Pan Hong's eyes narrowed. Even if he had guessed it, his heart was still shocked when he heard him admit it. He took a deep breath and slowly exhaled, saying, I know. You can go back. After encountering such a scene today, I guess they were frightened. Go and see them. Hearing this, Pan Ning secretly breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Even if his elder brother guessed that his survival had something to do with Hao and the others, he would never have thought that the 3 children were already people who dare to kill. How could they be easily frightened? Just as he was about to go out, he heard his elder brother's voice behind him. Wait a moment. Pan Hong seemed to have just reacted. He glanced at him and asked hesitantly, Those black-robed men couldn't have been killed by Hao, right? How could it be? Elder brother, I'll go first to see the children. Pan Ning turned back and smiled embarrassedly. Without waiting for him to say anything else, he quickly left. Seeing him like this, how could Pan Hong ask more? He just felt that it was inconceivable. In the room on the other side, the 6 children were all sitting in the room. Compared with Bowen, who had a more introverted personality, Bo Ching was like a little monkey walking around the room, looking at this and playing with that, and asking all kinds of questions. Yu obediently sat at the side of the table with her hands supporting her chin. Blinking her beautiful and pure eyes, she had an innocent appearance. No one would have thought that such a well-behaved, pure, and harmless child would actually kill 3 specially trained death soldiers just a moment ago. Muchin sat by the side and didn't say anything. He just pursed his lips and listened to Bo Ching talk nonstop. From time to time, Shua would turn her head to look outside the room. Bowen sat there quietly, occasionally looking at Hao who was sitting in the corner. No one knew what he was thinking. When Pan Ning walked in and saw that the children were all there, he said, You must be tired today, right? After the meal, let's all rest first. Tomorrow morning, we'll take a stroll around the temple. After lunch, we'll return. Other than how and the other two, Bowen and the other two, didn't know what had happened. Hearing him say this, Bowen said, "Second uncle, I heard from the monks in the temple that someone died at this time. That has nothing to do with us, and it has nothing to do with your children. Don't think too much about it. All right, let's go. Let's go eat first," he said with a smile, and looked at how Mu-chun, and the children followed him to eat. By the time they returned, the sky was already dark. After freshening up, they returned to their rooms early to rest. Chapter 4480. Big Brother, can we use the stick to ask when we're going home? You were asked, holding her brother's hand on the left and her brother's hand on the right. You can shake it later and then take it to see if it's accurate. How? Or said with a smile, holding her hand and walking slowly. Big Brother, we are immortals. Why do we have to worship Buddha? Muchin asked, puzzled. They were obviously immortal cultivators. His brother also said that their parents were very powerful and were the monarchs of heaven and earth. Since that was the case, why did they still have to worship Buddha? How? O looked at the hall in front of them and said, "We don't worship or kneel. We will only shake the stick. You have to remember that in this world, except for our parents and our elders, no one else is qualified to make us kneel and kowtow." Hearing this, Mu Chun and Mu Yu nodded and secretly remembered it in their hearts. Big Brother, is Buddha powerful or immortals powerful? Why do people here only worship Buddha and not immortals? You were asked curiously. Howard paused, thought for a moment, and said, "I don't know. When we see father and mother in the future, we will ask them." Okay, you were asked with a smile. The three of them came to the hall. Perhaps because it was still early, other than the three of them, there was only the abbot, who they saw yesterday, standing in front of the lamp adding oil, and a middle-aged monk standing behind the abbot. Seeing them enter, the abbot and the monk glanced at them. This was the first time the middle-aged monk saw the three of them. He felt that these three children were born with the looks of dragons and phoenixes and were extremely outstanding. However, in the next moment, the three children's actions stunned him. After the three of them came in, they only bowed to the golden Buddha above the hall. Then the little girl went to the front and picked up a stick. She took out another stick and looked at it, puzzled, and asked, "Big Brother, how do we shake this? There are only numbers on it and nothing else. Does this mean that the number is shaken out?" Looking at this scene, the middle-aged monk secretly shook his head and walked over, saying, "Which family are you children from? Why didn't you come with an adult?" He came to the three children and said, "How can you be so polite when you see Buddha? You have to kneel and make a wish with all your heart. Then Buddha can hear your thoughts." Hearing this, you blinked her eyes, then curiously asked, "Can he hear us?" If it was an adult who spoke like that, the middle-aged monk would have been enraged. However, it was a 3 or 4-year-old little girl who was blinking her pure and clear eyes at him curiously. He carefully explained, "My Buddha is everywhere. Naturally, he can hear it." You was dumbfounded, then asked, "Then how should I draw the lot? If I ask him how to get home, will he tell me?" "Ha ha, to sign, you have to kneel down, put your palms together, and make a wish in your heart. Kowtow 3 times, then pick up the bamboo stick and turn it 3 times. Hold it with both hands and gently shake it up and down until one of the words falls to the ground." The middle-aged monk chuckled. Looking at how adorable this little girl was and how innocent she was, he decided to teach her in detail. And Ur understands. Chapter 4481. Hey no. The middle-aged monk was about to speak when he was interrupted. Nothing. The abbot opened his mouth and shook his head slightly, indicating that he didn't need to say anything. The middle-aged monk was startled. After glancing at the abbot, he looked at the little girl who was shaking the stick. The stick made a sound as she shook it. The crisp sound echoed in the hall, one sound after another. The abbot also stepped forward and stood quietly at the side to watch. After a long time, a stick fell to the ground, and the stick container also stopped. Ur was happy. She smiled and picked up the stick. "Little benefactor, let this old monk help you solve the stick." The abbot stepped forward with a kind smile on his face. Yes, here. Yu handed the stick to him and looked at him with a pair of beautiful eyes. She asked with some expectation, "Can this tell me when we can go home and see father and mother?" The host smiled and looked at the bamboo stick. In the next moment, the smile on his face froze. He saw that this was an unmarked bamboo stick. He carefully looked at the other half of the bamboo stick again. There was still no sign on the front or back. Just as he was frowning, he saw that on the bamboo stick there were golden words floating. Seeing this, he couldn't help but be shocked. This, how can this be? The middle-aged monk was also shocked. He opened his eyes wide in disbelief. Generally, only the number was written on the bamboo stick, and then the corresponding number was taken. However, there was no sign on the bamboo stick. At this moment, lines of golden words appeared out of thin air. Even though he had stayed in the Emperor Temple for many years and solved the sticks for more than 20 years, he had never encountered such a shocking thing. Since they saw it, Howard naturally saw it too. Looking at this scene, Howard didn't say anything. He just glanced at it and then looked at the golden Buddha statue in the hall. He was also a little surprised. Immortal fetus is pregnant with a dragon and a phoenix is born. However, there is no fated star in the heavenly palace. It is difficult to survive. Let nature take its course and don't force it. The abbot softly read these words, but the hand holding the stick trembled slightly. Immortal fetus? No fated star? As Howard listened to the host reading the lot, he raised his eyebrows and his cold little face turned frosty. He took a step forward and took the bamboo stick from the abbot's hand to read it again. He pursed his thin lips and looked at the abbot and the middle-aged monk. "It's best if you don't reveal a single word about what happened today," he said coldly and turned to lead Mu Chun and Mu Yu out of the room. Seeing them leave, the middle-aged monk took a deep breath and looked at the abbot. He wanted to ask, but he found that he couldn't speak. It was as if the words were stuck in his throat, and he didn't know where to start. Today's matter had far exceeded his imagination. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have dared to believe that the Buddha had really made an appearance. But why was it such a little girl? And that poem, Abbot, the bamboo stick has been taken away by them. Only then did he realize that the bamboo stick with the Lord Buddha's spirit had been taken away by them. The abbot took a deep breath and suppressed the churning in his heart. He hurriedly went to the center of the hall and knelt down. Putting his hands together, he softly chanted, Amit. Chapter 44:82. Seeing this, the middle-aged monk asked, "Abbot, that sign?" His voice paused because he saw the abbot's gaze on him, making it difficult for him to continue his question. "Nothing. You must forget this matter. You need to know that there are some things that you and I should not know about," he said slowly. "But if we spread the news of the Buddha's manifestation, the incense in the Emperor Temple will be even more prosperous. Moreover, this is the first time the Buddha's manifestation in the temple's history. Are we going to suppress this matter just like that?" he said anxiously. He did not understand what the abbot was thinking. "Don't talk about this anymore," he said with a frown. He glanced at him and said, "Remember, don't tell anyone about this." As soon as he finished speaking, he walked out. Seeing the abbot leave, the middle-aged man opened his mouth, but in the end he just sighed softly and shook his head. He walked to the corner and sat down beside the sign. No matter how he thought about it, he could not understand why Buddha would manifest to a little girl. On the other side, Mu Chun and Mu Yu looked at their big brother who was holding their hands as he strode forward. Seeing the cold aura on his body and his face colder than usual, they couldn't help but look at each other. "Big brother, you are called out." "How?" Or stopped and looked at Yu, then at Mu Chun. "Don't worry, I will protect you. I won't let anything happen to you." That talisman was extremely accurate, and it also caused a trace of anger to rise in his heart. What 9 deaths, 1 life, and difficult to survive? What about letting nature take its course and not forcing it? He only knew that his mother had told him that man's will triumph over nature. Moreover, his mother not only told him with words, but also with actions that man's will triumph over nature. So, what let nature take its course and not forcing it meant nothing to him. Mu Chun thought for a while and said, "Big brother, we will work hard to cultivate. When we are as powerful as you, even if there is danger, we will be able to protect ourselves. Yes, yes, you are too. You will not go out to play when she goes back. You will also work hard to cultivate. The little one hurriedly promised. Hearing their words, Howard suppressed the rising and falling emotions in his heart. After a while, he led the two to a pavilion and sat down. He said, Big brother knows that Chun and you have always been very obedient and also worked very hard to cultivate. Big brother knows all about it. Big brother, hereafter we will never go to shake that lot again. You said she didn't want Big brother to be very angry like just a moment ago. Hearing this, Har rubbed her head and said, Big brother will think of a way. Big brother will think of a way to let father and mother know that we are here. He looked at the sky, and his thoughts became more and more determined. In the mortal world, he couldn't contact his parents with his communication jade. Even though he had recovered his cultivation strength and had the silver wolf as his companion, he couldn't return to the heavenly realm where they were originally from with his cultivation strength. However, if this continued, they might not be able to leave the mortal world for a few years or even 10 years. Pan Ning said that he had found traces of an immortal and had invited him to the imperial capital. Even if he did not expect much, he still had to go and see who it was. He had to think of a way to break this situation. Big brother, do you still want this thing? You are pointed at that bamboo stick in his hand. Chapter 44:83. When they arrived at the courtyard, they saw Pan Ning and others were eating breakfast. Seeing them come in, Pan Ning didn't ask much and just said, Come and have some porridge. I'll take you around later. Okay. Howard and others answered and walked forward to sit down. Pan Hong had already eaten and was sitting in the wheelchair reading a book. The children of Pan family saw them and asked in a low voice, Where did you go early in the morning? Why didn't you call us? Brother took us to the temple, but there was nothing fun, so we came back. You said with a smile. For them, there was really no fun place in the temple. If there was a place for them to play freely, it was only the peach forest at the back of the mountain. However, someone died in the peach forest yesterday, so they wouldn't let them go again. But the peaches in the peach forest were very good, so she wanted to pick some back. So, after they drank breakfast, they followed Pan Ning to stroll around. Until the time when they were about to leave, Yer pulled her brother and eldest brother and quietly walked away and went to the back forest to pick a basket of peaches. Pan Ning and others were about to get on the carriage, but they saw that the 3 children of Pan family had already gotten on the carriage, but they didn't see Howard and others. They couldn't help but be surprised. They glanced around and saw that 17 was also missing, so they went to the carriage in front. Eldest brother, I don't know where Howard and others went. I guess we have to wait for a while. You go and look for them. We'll wait here. Pan Hong said. Okay. Pan Ning responded and turned around to look for it. Just then, he saw the 3 children running over with a basket of peaches. 17 followed behind them. Seeing this, he was slightly surprised. You guys want to pick peaches? And then, we picked some back for great-grandfather and others to taste. You said with a smile. Hearing this, Pan Ning couldn't help but smile. He reached out and took the basket in Howard's hand and said, Give it to me. Quickly get on the carriage. We're going back. Okay. The 3 children answered and quickly got on the carriage. After they got on the carriage, 17 also got on and drove the carriage back. At the main gate of the Emperor Temple, the abbot slowly walked out. Looking at the carriage that was gradually disappearing into the distance, he put his palms together and said softly, Amit Ba. 2 days later, the Pan family welcomed Marquis Chi and his wife. The 2 of them came with gifts to express their gratitude for saving their lives in the Emperor Temple. In the main hall of the Pan family, a dignified man in his 30s looked at the Pan family's father and Pan Ning, who sat on his right. He smiled and said, Second young master from the Emperor Temple saved my wife. We have always wanted to pay you a visit, but we have been investigating the Death Warrior for the past 2 days. We hope second young master won't take offense. My lord, you're being too serious. It's just a small matter. How could I trouble my lord and madam to visit? Pan Ning hurriedly said, Ha ha, to be able to save Madam Ho is also fate. My lord, you don't have to take this to heart. Pan family's father smiled. He only knew that they had returned from the Emperor Temple. They said that something happened there, and the second son happened to save Marquis Chi's wife. Hearing this, the Marquis smiled and paused for a moment. He said, I heard from Madam that there is a pair of children who look exactly the same in your residence. They are extremely cute and outstanding. I wonder if my wife and I can go to see them? Chapter 4484. Pan Ning furrowed his brows and glanced at the madam. Obviously, the madam had told her husband about what happened at that time. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He should have known earlier. When the madam saw Pan Ning's slightly furrowed brows, her eyes couldn't help but flicker. She lowered her gaze and didn't look at him. The two children were so exquisite and outstanding that she liked them very much. Although she didn't go out these 2 days, she asked people to inquire about the news and found out that the two children were brought back by Pan Ning more than a year ago. He said that they were their distant relatives. However, after some investigation, they naturally found out that they weren't distant relatives, as he said. However, what surprised her and her husband was that even with the influence of the Marquis's estate, they were actually unable to find out the origins of those two children. However, from the scene that day, she knew that those two children were not ordinary children. What's wrong? Is it inconvenient? Master Ho asked and looked at the two of them. Ha ha, it's not inconvenient. I'll ask someone to call them over. Master Pan said with a smile. He didn't think much of it. After all, Mu Chun and Mu Yu were very exquisite, and it was normal for people to like them. No need to trouble yourself. Let's go and have a look. Master Ho stood up and said with a smile, it will be more or less restrained to let the children into the hall. Second young master, please take us over to have a look. Seeing this, Master Pan gestured, you take Master Ho and the others over. Treat them well and don't be rude. Hearing this, Pan Ning stood up, and after answering, he said to the two of them, Master Ho, Madam Ho, this way please. At the same time, in the south courtyard, the three children were practicing in their rooms and didn't go out. Only 17 was guarding outside the courtyard. Second young master. 17 saw Pan Ning and stepped forward to bow. Go in and say that Master Ho and Madam are here for Chun and Yua. Pan Ning gestured. Yes. 17 responded and turned to go in. Seeing this scene, Master Ho and Madam Ho felt a little strange. Master Ho looked at Pan Ning and said jokingly, could it be that without their permission, we can't enter the courtyard where they live? Pan Ning glanced at him and said, the three children live together in this courtyard. They don't like to be disturbed when they want to rest or study. That's why this rule was set. What a good personality. He smiled and saw two children of the same height and appearance walk out. When he saw the two children, his eyes couldn't help but light up. What an exquisite pair of children. He couldn't help but praise. His gaze fell on the two children and sized them up. The more he looked, the more surprised he was. The two children were no more than 3 or 4 years old. The little boy in the white robe had a noble aura about him, while the little girl in the pink dress had a spiritual aura about her. She looked very adorable. Uncle Ning, the two of them called out and looked at the two people at the side. This is the Lord Marquis and Lady Marquis. They said they wanted to come and see you. Pan Ning introduced them briefly and did not say anything else. Looking at the two children, Madam Ho couldn't help but smile. She squatted down and held Yu's little hand, saying, children, look what I brought for you. While speaking, she took out a box from her sleeve. When she opened the box, there were 2 luminous pearls the size of egg yolks inside. Chapter 4485. When Pan Ning saw the 2 luminous pearls, his eyes couldn't help but flicker with a touch of surprise. This luminous pearl was extremely precious and rare. He knew that His Majesty had once bestowed 2 to Chi Bohu, but he didn't expect that they would give it to Yu and the rest. Seeing this, he glanced at Madam Ho and saw that she was looking at Yu and Mu Chun with love in her eyes. He was relieved, but he still said, my lord, madam, this gift is too precious. Haha, it's okay. My wife likes these two children very much. She took a long time to choose from the storeroom before finally choosing this gift. Chi Bohu smiled and said, children like this kind of shiny things. Let them keep it. Mu Chan glanced at the pearl and thought, this luminous pearl is indeed small. The one in our space is much bigger than this. Yuer took the box, but after looking at her brother, she shook her head and pushed back that night pearl box. Aunt, we can't accept this. Our big brother said that we can't casually accept other people's things. After pushing the box back, she quickly hid behind her brother. Her eldest brother said that they were immortal cultivators and shouldn't accept too many favors because they have to return them. Madame Ho was startled and said, it's okay, you can take it. No, it's useless for us to take it. Mu Chan said with a straight face and put his hands behind his back, not wanting to take it. This was the first time they gave a luminous pearl, and they couldn't give it away. For a moment, the couple was stunned. Pan Ning saw that the two children really didn't want it, so he said, my lord, madam, the children are still young. It's not appropriate to give such a precious thing to them. You can keep it. Hearing this, Madame Ho had to keep the gift. She hesitated for a moment and asked with a trace of expectation, can I invite them to stay in our residence for a few days? I really like these two children. She looked at Pan Ning and said, second young master, you also know that my husband and I have been married for many years without children. It's rare to see such children, so I want to let them stay in our residence for a few days. Don't worry, I will treat them very well and send them back after a few days. No. Before Pan Ning could speak, a cold voice directly rejected him. Hearing the voice, they looked in the direction of the voice and saw Hao walking out of the courtyard. His handsome little face was cold and stern. He glanced coldly at the two people and said to Mu Chun and Mu Yu, go back to your rooms. All right. The two little fellows answered obediently and walked into the courtyard hand in hand. After entering the room, they closed the door and leaned against the door to eavesdrop on the conversation outside. Hao retracted his gaze and looked at Pan Ning. Uncle Ning, we'll be studying by ourselves for a while. I don't want anyone to disturb us. Hearing this, Pan Ning hurriedly said, okay, I got it. I'll tell them later. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Hao turn around and enter the courtyard. At the same time, he instructed 17. From today onwards, I won't see anyone, and there's no need to come in and report. Yes. 17 noticed Hao's displeasure and immediately responded respectfully. Chapter 4486. Yes. Pan Ning answered and said, his name is Hao. Master Ho nodded and said thoughtfully, this child doesn't look ordinary at all. Pan Ning didn't answer but said, Master Ho, madam, why don't we have tea in the front hall? No, since they don't want to stay in our mansion, we won't stay for long. Master Ho smiled and said, I'll ask madam to pick some toys that children like and send them over. We'll take our leave. Seeing this, Pan Ning sent them out. When he was about to go back, he saw his elder brother waiting for him in the front yard. They came for you, Pan Hong asked and looked at him. I guess Madam Ho said something to Master Ho. They said they liked the two children very much and wanted to take them to stay in a mansion for a while, but Hao directly refused. Pan Ning said. He paused and said, but in my opinion, they don't have any other intentions. They just like the two children. Pan Hong nodded and said, Marquis Qi and his wife have a good reputation in the capital. Even if they find something strange, they won't hold on to the children. But even so, we have to be careful. I know. How? Or just said not to disturb them during this period. I guess they won't go out for a while. The two brothers chatted for a while in the front yard. Then Pan Ning told people not to disturb them in the south yard. At the same time, he told the three children in the mansion not to look for Hao and the other two children during this period. In the next few days, Hao and the other two children practiced in the yard. Even the people in the mansion didn't know what they were busy with all day. They only knew that they almost didn't leave the room except for meals. Until one day, a piece of news came out from the Emperor Temple and caused a huge sensation in the capital. Have you heard? News came out from the Emperor Temple. A few days ago, Buddha showed himself and gave a spiritual stick. and it is said that the one who got the spiritual stick is a little girl of 3 or 4 years old. What? Spiritual stick? What kind of spiritual stick? Why is it a 3 or 4-year-old girl who begged for it? I heard that it was a white stick, but when the abbot held it in his hand, specks of golden light appeared on the white stick, and a few lines of words appeared. Furthermore, it was said that the little girl didn't even kneel and kowtow. She just stood there and begged for the spirit stick. However, this matter was suppressed by the abbot and only recently spread. Why did the abbot suppress it? How could it be leaked if it was suppressed? What was written on the paper? Who was that little girl? How can I get the Buddha, Lord, to show up? I heard that it was because the great Master Wu spoke in his sleep during the interpretation of the divination stick. Also, I heard that the little girl is not a mortal, but a divine fetus. It was said that the divination stick was written by Buddha. On the street, groups of 3 to 5 people were discussing in low voices. As the news spread, several versions of the same matter were spread. Some were true, and some were false. It was very suspicious. When the members of the Pan family heard the news, the father and son of the Pan family gathered in the main hall, looking at Pan Ning with serious expressions. Pan Ning's father asked, "What's going on? Why did such a rumor come out when you went to the Emperor Temple? Now it is spread outside, and the more it spreads, the more outrageous it becomes. His Majesty already knows about it, and sent people to the Emperor Temple to invite the abbot and great Master Wu to the palace." Pan Hong frowned and thought deeply. Chapter 4487. I'll go with you to the south courtyard and ask what's going on. Then we can make preparations as soon as possible. Pan Hong pushed the wheelchair to Pan Ning. Okay. Pan Ning pushed him out and said to his father, "Father, we'll go and ask." "Don't worry." Pan Ning's father watched them leave and shook his head with a sigh. He also got up and walked out. When Pan Ning and the others arrived at the south courtyard, they saw that it was very quiet. They didn't see the 3 children come out, so they asked 17 to go in and inform them. "First young master, second young master how told us not to disturb them these days." This 17 was a little embarrassed. "You go and call how. I'll take responsibility if anything happens." Pan Ning gestured. If this wasn't an important matter, they wouldn't disturb them. Seeing this, 17 responded and walked inside. She came to Hao Er's door and reported, "Young Master Hao, first young master and second young master are outside. They said it's urgent." Hao Er, who was cultivating in the room, slowly opened his eyes when he heard the sound. He exhaled softly and restrained his spiritual aura. Then he got up and opened the door to leave the room. When he came outside, he saw Pan Hong and Pan Ning. He said, "Uncle Hong, Uncle Ning, please come in." The two nodded and walked into the courtyard with him. They came to the stone table and sat down. Before he spoke, Pan Ning told him, "We came to find you because we have something to ask. That day, when we went to the Emperor Temple, did you ask for some kind of sign?" Hearing this, Hao glanced at them and asked instead of answering, "What's wrong?" The Pan brothers looked at each other. Pan Hong said, "It said that the Buddha of the Emperor Temple showed that the person who asked for the sign was a divine fetus. Now the news has spread. The abbot of the Emperor Temple and Nothingness have been summoned to the palace by His Majesty. It won't be long before people from the palace come here. So we want to ask, what kind of sign was it? Was there really a vision?" Hao Er's handsome little face turned cold. He asked, "How did the news spread?" "It said that other monks heard Nothingness talking in his sleep, so it spread." Pan Ning said, and looked at Hao. He asked, "What about the sign? What does it say?" "I've already thrown away the bamboo stick. As for what was written on the stick, it was." Hao repeated the few lines of the stick. Hearing his words, the two's faces became somewhat grave. Pan Hong's eyes were filled with unconcealable astonishment and blankness. Especially after seeing his younger brother's unsurprised expression, the shock in his heart became even more unconcealable. He had guessed that Hao Er and the other two's identities were not simple, but he had never expected them to be so complicated. Divine fetus? Could it be that they were not mortals, but immortal? Could it be that the 3 of you are not mortals, but immortals? Pan Hong asked. unable to conceal his shock. He's not an immortal. He's just a cultivator. Howard looked at him and said, however, our identities are indeed extraordinary. This is also the reason why we have to keep it secret. There really are immortals in this world. Pan Hong murmured. His heart was in a state of shock. Chapter 44:88. Hearing this, Pan Hong calmed himself down. He took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. After his mood gradually calmed down, he pondered for a while and said, since His Majesty has summoned the Emperor Temple's abbot and Jiaowu, I'm afraid we can't hide the matter of the sign. He glanced at the two of them and slowly said, His Majesty has been searching for immortality for some time now. He won't let go of this opportunity, especially since Hao and the other two are still in our home. I'm afraid that once this matter is known, in addition to the fact that I was judged by the highly skilled doctor and the city's physician that I wouldn't live past that night, he will undoubtedly believe that you are immortals. Then what should we do? Pan Ning couldn't help but ask anxiously. In terms of scheming and thinking, he was far inferior to his brother. Now that his brother also knew about this matter, he would at least feel more at ease with him coming up with ideas and solutions. Pan Hong pondered for a while and said, if His Majesty asks, we have to say we don't know. Otherwise, if he blames us for deceiving the Emperor, we will be in big trouble. As for Hao and the other two, if His Majesty asks, you also have to say you don't know. After all, you are still young and can say you don't know about the sign. As for the immortal fetus, it's just what the sign said. There is no other evidence. Even if His Majesty guesses, he can't be sure. Also, you have to explain this matter to Mu Chun and you. If you go to the palace, we will accompany you and act according to the circumstances. Pan Hong looked at Hao and said, I understand. Hao responded and said, I'll go tell them first. As he spoke, he walked to the room where Mu Chun and Mu Yu were. At the same time, the palace sent people. At this time, they entered the residence and were led by Pan Ning's father to the southern courtyard. In the southern courtyard, Pan Hong and Pan Ning saw the people from the palace and looked at each other. Before they could speak, they heard their father say, these people are from the palace. They say they want to invite Hao and the other two to the palace. Pan Ning's father's face was a little dignified. He didn't expect things to turn out like this. In particular, he was even more uneasy because he didn't know anything. In the room, after Hao explained a few things to Mu Chun and Mu Yu, the three of them went out of the room. After taking a look at the people from the palace, they followed Pan Ning out. Apart from Pan Ning, no one else in the Pan family was allowed to come along. Even Pan Hong was ordered to stay behind. The three children followed Pan Ning into the palace and came to a side chamber. The person who led the way asked them to wait for a while and went in to report. Not long after, there was a voice asking them to enter. However, when Pan Ning wanted to follow in, he was stopped. Second young master, please wait for a moment. His Majesty said to let the three children in and will summon second young master later. Pan Ning's heart sank when he heard this. He couldn't help but glance at Hao and the other two. Take good care of the two little ones. Pan Ning could only instruct. Hao responded and led Mu Chun and Mu Yu inside. When they entered the side hall, they saw that other than the Emperor, who was seated in the main seat, there was an old man standing beside him, as well as the host and nothingness. Perhaps he felt guilty, but when he saw the three children enter, the abbot put his palms together and murmured, Amit Ba. Chapter 44:89. These are the three little immortals. His Majesty, who was sitting at the top, had a strange look in his eyes. He looked at the three children standing in the hall. The oldest one was only about 10 years old, but he was very good-looking. His facial features were clear and handsome. It could be seen that in the future, he would grow up to be an outstanding man. What surprised him even more was that this young boy's aura was so different from the others. He had a noble aura about him, and there was also an intimidating aura about him. This was not something an ordinary child could possess. Looking at him, he was even more certain of his guess. This little boy must be an immortal. Looking at the pair of children about 4 years old next to him, they looked exactly the same. Their outstanding facial features were exquisite and lovely, like immortal children. They were so good-looking that people couldn't take their eyes off them. These 3 children each had their own characteristics and were so extraordinary. Even his princes and sons could not compare to them, saying that they were not immortals. How could he believe that? How and the others stood and watched without speaking. Seeing this, His Majesty looked at Liao Wu and asked, "Which child was the one who shook the lot?" "Your Majesty, it was that little girl," Liao Wu said nervously, not daring to look at Hao and the others. The abbot sighed softly and said, "Your Majesty, the matter of the lot is not serious. They are just ordinary children. I will decide whether they are immortals or not." His Majesty chuckled. Clearly, he did not take his words seriously. Instead, he looked at the 3 children and finally at Yu. He showed a gentle smile and asked, "What is your name?" Yu glanced at her eldest brother and said, "I am Xin Yuan Miyue. How dare you? How dare you be so rude in front of His Majesty?" A shout came from the person who brought them in. His Majesty picked up his tea and took a sip as if he did not hear the shout. Seeing this, the eunuch shouted again, "Hurry up and kneel when you see His Majesty." Hao'er's face turned cold, and his aura also froze. Even Mu Chen's face was tense. He pursed his lips and looked displeased. "Your Majesty." The host opened his mouth, but was stopped by the emperor, who was sitting in the upper seat. He looked at the 3 children below and smiled. "No matter how noble your background is, when you come here and see me, you have to kneel and greet me, because I am the most supreme person here. However, if you admit yourselves that you are immortals, then there is no need to kneel. Not only that, but I will also treat you with respect. We won't kneel." As Hao spoke, his gaze fell on the emperor. "So, you're saying that you're immortals?" His Majesty's eyes lit up and he said, "If that's the case, then quickly show me your immortal spells and broaden my horizons." "Can immortals really live forever?" "We are not immortals," Hao said coldly. "They were not immortals to begin with, but cultivators." Hearing this, the smile on the emperor's face suddenly sank. The teacup in his hand was slammed to the side with a loud bang. The tea spilled out of the teacup and splashed all over the table. "How dare you make fun of me?" Chapter 4490. Ba, Your Majesty, please quell your anger," the abbot said softly. He stepped forward and said, "They are only children." The commotion in the side chamber made Pan Ning, who was standing guard outside, anxious. He tried to enter several times, but was stopped. He could only pace back and forth anxiously. In the side chamber, "Children? Have you ever seen a child remain neither arrogant, humble, nor panicked in the face of my wrath?" He snorted coldly and narrowed his eyes as he stared at the 3 children. He secretly admired them in his heart. These 3 children were so young, but their courage and insight were very big. It seemed that they really were immortals. His face was angry, but his mind was racing. His dignified gaze swept to the abbot and Liao Wu. He said, "You 2 leave first." "Your Majesty." "Leave," he shouted again in a low voice. Helpless, the abbot could only sigh softly and walk out. Behind him, Liao Wu walked quietly with his head lowered. The eunuch who brought the 3 children in also quietly left. Only the emperor, an old man beside him, and Hao were left in the large side chamber. He eased his expression and looked at the 3 people standing below. He said, "Tell me, who are you people? Since you are immortals, why are you here? How did you come here? Is there really a place for immortals in this world?" "I don't know," Hao said. He wasn't afraid of that person. With his current strength, he could naturally protect his younger siblings in this mortal world. If they really couldn't stay here any longer, then they would leave this place. In any case, they had to find a way back. "Aren't you afraid that I will kill you?" He narrowed his eyes and stared at them with a dangerous look. He said, "Even if you aren't afraid you afraid of implicating the Pan family?" Hao face grew colder and colder when he heard this. Even Mu Chun and Mu Yu, although they didn't say anything, had a trace of anger in their eyes. The old man, standing beside His Majesty, had been secretly observing them. He realized that after His Majesty's words, the aura of the three of them suddenly changed. Among them, a flash of murderous intent in the eyes of the eldest child made him feel apprehensive. It was precisely because of this that when the Emperor was about to threaten him, he hurriedly spoke up to stop him. "Your Majesty, why don't you let the Pan family's second young master in? Perhaps he will know where they came from." Inexplicably, the aura emanating from the older child sent a chill down his spine. He felt a bone-chilling coldness. His Majesty glanced at him and nodded. Thus, the old man took a deep breath and shouted towards the outside. Pan Ning, who had been waiting outside for a long time, was worried that something might have happened inside. When he heard the call for him, he quickly went in. "Pan Ning greets Your Majesty." He stepped forward and bowed, glancing at the children from the corner of his eyes. He saw that Hao Er's aura was slightly cold and his little face was stern. Mu Chun pursed his lips and didn't say anything. Yu lowered her head and played with the corner of her clothes. Seeing this, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. "Pan Ning, I ask you, do you know the origins of these three children?" The man narrowed his eyes and asked. He had been in a high position for a long time and held power in his hands. He wanted to have endless lifespan. Thus, even if the other party was an important minister under him, he still wanted to know the reason. "Your Majesty, please forgive me. I don't know their origins." Pan Ning lowered his head and said. Chapter 4491. Pan Ning's heart sank, but he still lowered his head and respectfully said, "I really don't know their origin. When I brought them back, it was only because I saw that they had suffered a disaster and there was no lore by their side, so I brought them back home. I dare not deceive Your Majesty in the slightest." Seeing this, His Majesty pursed his lips and glanced at him, then turned his gaze to the little girl in a pink dress and said, "Previously, you said that your name is Xianyuan Muyu?" You are nodded. "Then what are your parents' names?" Yu's pair of beautiful eyes spun, and her eyes overflowed with a lively radiance. Beaming with smiles, she said, "My father is called Xianyuan Mose, and my mother is called Fengjiu." Listening to the little girl's words, His Majesty's expression softened and asked, "Then where are they now?" "I don't know. We forgot how to go home," Yu said in a soft voice. "Then you." He was about to ask again when he saw the eunuch who had previously retreated hurriedly come in with an excited face. "Your Majesty, great news, great news." His Majesty, who was about to get angry, heard this and leaned back on the dragon throne, asking neither hurriedly nor slowly, "Where did the joy come from?" "Reporting to Your Majesty, the immortal has entered the palace and is now coming to the side hall. Does Your Majesty want to see him now?" Or, "You said the immortal?" His Majesty, who was originally leaning on the dragon throne, suddenly stood up with a happy face and asked with an unconcealable excitement on his face, "Where is the immortal now? Quickly, please come in." He thought for a moment, suppressed the joy in his heart, and sat down again. Looking at the several people in the hall, he waved his hand and said, "Okay, you all withdraw first. Go outside and wait. I have something to ask you a while." In his opinion, even if these three children asked for a spirit lot, it was not as exciting as the visit of an immortal. Pan Ning quickly responded and led Hao Er and the other two out of the side hall. At this time, a man in a loose robe with a goatee came over. When he saw Mu Chun, Mu Yu, and Hao Er, his eyes lit up and his footsteps couldn't help but stop. He stared at them, and even his breathing was a little heavy. The other party's gaze was inexplicably scorching. It was difficult for Hao Er and the other two not to notice. The three of them looked at the man. The two little ones didn't notice anything. They just frowned. Their delicate little faces were filled with displeasure. However, after Hao Er saw that person, his face turned cold and a trace of killing intent flashed through his eyes. Because he perceived the other's aura. Was not a cultivator, but a demon. "Hao Er, what's wrong?" Pan Ning couldn't help but ask in a low voice when he saw him stop and stare coldly at the immortal. Howard watched as the eunuch brought the man in and disappeared from sight. Only then did he say, "This is not the place to talk." Pan Ning nodded. There were many eyes and ears in the palace, and this was definitely not a place to talk. But His Majesty told them to wait outside, and they couldn't go far. Benefactors. The host's voice sounded, and they looked over to see him and Liao Wu standing not far away looking at them. Seeing this, Pan Ning led them over. Before he could speak, the host looked at Hao and the other two apologetically and said, "3 benefactors, we have caused trouble for you." He felt very apologetic, but unfortunately, now that things had developed like this, there was no way to cover it up. Chapter 4492. Being looked at so coldly by a small child, Master Wu also lowered his head in shame. After all, they were in the wrong in this matter. Moreover, they were monks, yet they had caused the 3 children to fall into such a situation. They really shouldn't have done that. What's done is done. There's no point in talking about it. Pan Ning said and patted Mu Chen's shoulder. While the few of them were chatting, in the side hall, the emperor was looking at the man in the loose robe with suspicion. This man is an immortal? He doesn't look any different from us. Could it be that he's a fake? Therefore, he wanted to test him. "May I ask, immortal, where is your home? What kind of immortal technique do you practice? May I have the honor of witnessing an immortal's immortal technique?" He asked, his gaze falling on the bearded man. This little immortal has been traveling around. I heard that your majesty has the heart to seek immortality, so I came to take a look." He stroked his beard and smiled. Looking at the emperor, he said, "If your majesty wants to see this little immortal's immortal technique, there's nothing wrong with that. After all, your majesty is the true dragon, the son of heaven. What's the harm in having a look?" As he spoke, he smiled and placed one hand behind his back and the other behind his back. As the aura on his body surged, he slowly flew up into the air. Below his feet, a cloud of white clouds condensed, making him look like an immortal and otherworldly being. An immortal. He's really an immortal. Even the emperor couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when he saw this scene. He was so excited that he stood up. This was the first time he saw an immortal in the legends. Immortals could really ride the clouds. How extraordinary! Even the old man, standing next to the emperor, narrowed his eyes when he saw this scene. Obviously, this was the first time he saw an immortal in the legends. "Immortal, may I ask how to live forever?" He couldn't wait to ask. Hearing this, the immortal's heart skipped a beat. His eyes flashed, and he stroked his beard. With a wave of his sleeve, an alchemy cauldron appeared at the side of the hall. Looking at the huge cauldron that appeared out of thin air, the emperor was even more convinced that this was an immortal. Besides immortals, who else could make such a huge thing appear out of thin air? "Immortal, this is?" he asked in confusion. He slowly descended, and the white clouds under his feet disappeared. He stood with his hands behind his back and said unhurriedly, "This is this immortal's alchemy furnace. If your majesty wants to live forever, this immortal only needs to refine a pill for you to live forever." However, but what? The emperor quickly asked. The immortal looked at the emperor and said with a smile, "It's just that the medicine in the mortal world is not spiritual medicine and cannot be used at all. Even if this immortal wants to help your majesty achieve longevity, I am powerless." Hearing this, he was stunned and hurriedly asked, "Then what should we do? Is there any other way? Immortal, please help me achieve my wish of immortality. I can promise you the position of Grand Preceptor. I can promise you endless wealth and supreme status." He stroked his beard, glanced at him, and said, "If your majesty really wants to live forever, this immortal has a way. Moreover, I just saw an excellent medicinal primer." "What medicinal primer?" "Immortal, please tell me. No matter what it is, I will definitely get it," he said hurriedly. Chapter 4493. Hearing this, not to mention the emperor, even the silent old man's pupils constricted. Clearly, he did not dare to believe it. Refining a child into a pill? How could that be? The emperor was stunned. He looked at him and did not speak for a long time. Refining a 3 to 4-year-old child into a pill? This kind of thing was too bloody and cruel. He had never even thought of such a thing. Although he wanted to live forever, he was not a fatuous ruler. Even if he was the emperor, he would not dare to do such a thing that would anger the heavens and the people. Immortal, you said that refining the 2 children into a pill would allow me to live forever? He frowned and looked at the immortal in front of him. They are just 2 children who look better. How could they have such a miraculous effect? Moreover, refining people into pills, this is... He did not dare to speak of evil arts. After all, he was afraid of angering the immortal in front of him. Your Majesty, even if you are the emperor, you can't see that the 2 children have innate spiritual energy. They are spiritual embryos with great nourishment. Such spiritual embryos are hard to come by. There was a hint of excitement in his eyes. Thinking of the 2 children, he could not help but swallow his saliva. The emperor looked at his expression and his heart moved. He gradually calmed down. His originally excited heart cooled down as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over it. He smiled and said, "Immortal, how about this? You must be tired from the journey. Go and rest first. I will think about this later." "All right. However, Your Majesty, you must take good care of those 2 children." He put away the pill furnace and said worriedly. He did not think of anything else. He felt that if a mortal wanted to live forever, why would they think of anything else? However, he did not think that as the emperor of a country, he was not a fatuous ruler. He would always think about things over and over again. Why would he really do as he said and capture the 2 children to refine them into pills? After asking someone to take him away, the emperor sat on the dragon throne and slowly exhaled. After a moment of silence, he asked, "What do you think?" The old man thought for a moment and said, "This is strange. Immortals should be righteous people. Why would they use children to refine pills? Such a bloody and cruel thing. Even those whose hands are stained with blood would not think of it. Moreover, why would it be those 2 children?" The old man paused and hesitantly said, "Also, I have been observing the celestial." When the celestial talked about the child, his eyes lit up and he even swallowed his saliva. I'm afraid that if the child is refined into a pill, it will be the celestial that wants to eat it, right? The emperor nodded and said, "I also feel that this immortal's behavior and words are a little different from the immortals in the legends, but he does no immortal magic. Those 3 children are not ordinary people either. They were too calm when they saw Your Majesty. They were not frightened, nor did they panic. They're not ordinary people. Your Majesty, why don't you get more information from them?" The old man suggested. Hearing this, the emperor pondered for a while and had an idea in his heart. He called for someone to bring Pan Ning and the others over. Pan Ning, who was talking to the host, heard the summons. He bowed to the 2 of them and walked back with the 3 children. The host and Nothingness thought for a moment and followed. "Why are you here too?" The emperor glanced at the host and Nothingness, who followed behind, and raised his eyebrows. Chapter 4494. The emperor glanced at them and said, "Since you're here, stand at the side and listen." As he spoke, he looked at the 3 children standing in the middle. His gaze swept past Howard and landed on the 2 little ones. What was so special about these 2 children? They actually said that they could live forever if they were refined into elixirs. He felt strange. If he really refined these 2 children into elixirs, would he still be able to swallow the elixirs? When everyone saw that he was only staring at the 2 little children, they could not help but guess what he was thinking. What was he thinking? After a long time, the emperor regained his senses and coughed lightly. He looked at the 3 of them and asked, "Did you see that immortal just now?" How? Did not speak and only looked at him. You blinked and asked curiously, "That one with the goatee is an immortal?" Goatee? The emperor's mouth twitched. He clenched his fist and pressed it against his mouth. Then he said, "Yes, that's him." He looked at the 3 of them, and a faint light flashed through his eyes. He said tentatively, He told me that I could live forever if I refined you two little ones into elixirs. After he finished speaking, he instantly felt the atmosphere in the side hall turn cold. An icy aura immediately filled the air. Moreover, there was a faint oppressive pressure that caused one to be unable to breathe. This caused him to be shocked. His eyes narrowed as he suddenly looked at Xianyuan Hao, who had a cold expression on his face. The aura on this child's body was even more terrifying than his, the Emperor's. Why was this? While he was shocked, he faintly felt the aura in his body surging toward his throat. A trace of blood spread in his mouth. He groaned and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. "Uft! Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Your Majesty!" The old man, Pan Ning, the abbot, and nothingness in the hall were all shocked and suddenly cried out in alarm. After the exclamation, the old man guarding the emperor immediately attacked Hao. However, he didn't expect that before he could even get close to Hao, he was sent flying by Hao's flick of his hand. With a bang, he crashed heavily into a corner of the hall. He spat out blood and was unable to stand up for a long time. Pan Ning's face changed. He hurriedly called out and said anxiously, "Hao, calm down. Big brother." Yor pulled his sleeve and softly called out. Children were the most sensitive. She could clearly feel that the emperor had no intention of killing them. "Oomph. How?" Snorted coldly and withdrew the pressure he had released. In a flash, it was as if it had never appeared. However, only the people in the palace knew that just now, everyone was fine except for the emperor who had spat out a mouthful of blood. The emperor was also extremely shocked. He only felt that the aura above his head, which made it hard for him to breathe, had disappeared in an instant. His entire body relaxed, as if he had come back to life. That feeling was too wonderful, so much so that when he recovered his senses, his eyes were abnormally bright as he looked at Hao. At this moment, he was certain that these three children were not ordinary children. They were immortals. Cough, cough. He coughed softly and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. "Don't worry, I have no evil intentions. I only wanted to test you because I suspect that a mortal is not an immortal." Chapter 4495. Listening to his words, Pan Ning's forehead began to sweat, and he could feel the sweat on his back drenching his clothes. He was afraid that Yang Kai would be angry and vent his anger on the Pan family. For a moment, his body stiffened, and he didn't dare to speak. He just lowered his head and stood there calmly. If his big brother was here, he would know what to do. Hao looked at the bright-eyed emperor and pursed his lips. Seeing that there was no one else in the hall other than these people who knew about them, he said, "We are not immortals, but we are immortal cultivators." Hearing this, the emperor was overjoyed and immediately smiled. He wanted to ask something, but paused. He frowned and asked, "What about the immortal from before? Is he the same as you?" "Who said it was an immortal cultivator?" Hao glanced at him and said, "It was just a demon that cultivated into a spirit." "What? Demon?" The emperor was shocked, and his expression changed. "There is such a thing in this world." Seeing that things were out in the open, Hao said, "There are immortals, and naturally, there are demons. What's so strange about that? It's just that the spiritual energy in your mortal world is very weak. There should be fewer things that cultivate into demons. I guess that demon came from somewhere else. Our mortal world? Could it be that there are other worlds in this world besides this one?" The emperor asked in a daze. He felt that the mysteries he had never encountered before were slowly unfolding in front of him. Of course. Hao looked at them and said, "There are 3,000 worlds in this world. The mortal world you are in is the lowest level. In this mortal world, there will be no immortal cultivators. Unless there is some great opportunity, you will not even see one immortal cultivator in your life." "But I saw you." "Ha ha 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 ha. Does this mean that I am also a person with great opportunity?" His eyes flashed, and there was a faint excitement on his face. "How?" Glanced at him and pursed his lips. This emperor's skin was extraordinarily thick. Back then, when Pan Hong was judged to be unable to live past that night, it was you who saved him, right? The emperor did not mind his silence. At this time, he was still in a state of excitement. He stared at the three of them and asked, "What immortal abilities do you have? Can you show it to me? You haven't experienced it before?" Howard looked at him strangely and thought to himself, "Does this person have a tendency to be abused? Ha ha, I want to know if you can ride the clouds. Can you move mountains and seas? Can you—" Before he could finish, he was interrupted by How. "No," Howard snorted with a cold face. "Then what can you do?" He quickly asked again. The abbot, who had been silently digesting their words, quickly stepped forward when he saw this. He clasped his hands together and chanted Ba. "Your Majesty, I feel that we should talk about the demon. Now that there is an evil demon beside your Majesty in the palace, it is a threat." Chapter 4496. Even if the three people in front of him were children, they were immortals who practiced immortal arts. Just because they couldn't do it didn't mean that they couldn't. Thinking of this, there was a faint trace of expectation in his heart. If he could see them deal with the demon, he would also see their ability. Howard frowned and was about to speak when he heard a gloomy voice. "Ha ha 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 ha! Are you discussing how to deal with me?" A gust of wind blew past, and a figure rushed in. It almost didn't stop and rushed towards Mu Chun and Mu Yu. However, when it pounced on them, it was fiercely bounced back by a force. Puff! The figure was fiercely bounced to the side and spat out a mouthful of blood. It transformed into a human form and landed on the ground. It stepped back and stared at the two children with a gloomy gaze. "They actually have an evil warding magic treasure to protect them," Pan Ning exclaimed in a low voice. He only felt that his whole body was pushed to the side just now. Only then did he see that it was Howard who pushed him away. Otherwise, he would have been hit by the demon. While he was shocked, he couldn't help but look at the human-like demon. Could it be that Howard didn't say that they couldn't tell that this person was actually a demon? Howard looked at Mu Chun and Mu Yu and asked, "Are you okay?" It was because he knew that the two little ones had protective treasures given by their parents that they were not afraid of demons getting close to them. So, at that moment, he didn't pull them away and let the demon have a taste of the backlash of demon power. "We're fine." The two little ones shook their heads and didn't look frightened. "Go to the side." Howard gestured and then looked at the monster. With a move of his hand, a sword with a cold light appeared in his hand with a swoosh. The hidden spiritual power aura on his body spread out along with his strength. The spiritual power aura that could be seen with the naked eye wrapped around him, making him look even more extraordinary. The Emperor and the old man narrowed their eyes, and there was a faint look of shock in their eyes. Pan Ning had seen how kill people, but he had never seen him kill demons. At this time, when he saw the sword that appeared out of thin air, his heart couldn't help but jump. When he saw the sword in Howard's hand and the aura of spiritual power emanating from the sword, the human-like evil demon was shocked. He immediately took a step back and stared at Howard in shock. Golden Core Cultivator. How is this possible? How could a 10-year-old child reach the level of a Golden Core Cultivator? This was impossible. You dare to have designs on my sister-in-law? I will definitely destroy your soul and make you unable to reincarnate. How? Snorted coldly and pointed the sword in his hand to the ground. His figure suddenly rushed forward, and his sword moved at will, slashing towards the monster at a speed that was too fast for the ears to cover. "Hiss! No!" He cried out in alarm. Ignoring his human form, he immediately transformed into his original form and tried to escape. The other people in the hall only saw that the monster that looked like a human a moment ago had turned into a huge golden toad the next moment. It leaped on the ground and dodged Howard's attack with extreme speed. Whoosh! Bang! Chapter 4497. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! The abbot and Pan Ning's expressions changed as they cried out in alarm. The Emperor did not expect the monster to charge at him. He instinctively retreated to avoid it, but his body seemed to be controlled by a force and could not move. At the same time, The old man beside the emperor rushed forward and slashed at the golden toad with the sword in his hand. However, there was only a clanging sound. When the sword in his hand was deflected, he was also sent flying. Bang! The old man was sent flying violently and crashed into a corner. When he looked up, he saw the golden toad hugging the emperor's body. The next moment, it let out a sinister laugh and instantly turned into a ray of light and disappeared before everyone's eyes. "Your Majesty!" The old man was shocked and stood up by supporting himself against the wall. The imperial guards outside rushed in, and the commander shouted in a deep voice, "Who dares to assassinate in front of the palace? Arrest them!" "Stop!" Pan Ning shouted anxiously and quickly shielded Hao behind him. He faced the Imperial Guard commander and said, "It's a misunderstanding. It's just a misunderstanding. No one is trying to assassinate you. You may leave." The old man wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and ordered the Imperial Guard commander. Seeing the old man speak, the Imperial Guard commander hesitated for a moment. Just as he was about to leave, he heard the emperor's voice. That laughter was a little strange, causing the hearts of everyone in the hall to inexplicably tighten. This was especially so for the few people who had seen the demonic creature pounce towards the emperor and disappear into his body. Their expressions were exceptionally grave. "It's not a misunderstanding. These people are definitely trying to assassinate me. You arrest them." The emperor, who had originally closed his eyes, opened his eyes and said sinisterly. His expression was somewhat strange and excited, causing Pan Ning, the abbot, and the old man's hearts to sink. Was the emperor being controlled by an evil monster? However, before they could recover from their inconceivable shock, they heard the Imperial Guard commander respectfully reply, "Yes. Arrest them all." With that order, the Imperial Guards rushed out and quickly restrained the abbot and Pan Ning. When they got close to Pan Ning, the Imperial Guards were repelled by Pan Ning, and he shouted in a deep voice, "It's not what you see. They won't listen to you. They will only listen to the emperor." However, the emperor has been possessed and controlled by that demon, Hao said calmly. His cold little face was indifferent, but he held his sword and stood in front of his younger brother and sister. His mind was quickly thinking of solution. "All of you back off," shouted the old man in a deep voice. The old man was the emperor's trusted aide, and his words usually carried a lot of weight. However, at this moment, the Imperial Guard commander hesitated. "Leave the two young ones alive. As for the rest, kill them on the spot." The emperor's gloomy voice sounded at this moment, undoubtedly causing the already tense atmosphere in the hall to become even more tense. Yes, the Imperial Guard no longer hesitated. He drew his sword and attacked Pan Ning and the others in the hall. Even if they had doubts, a saint fate was a saint fate. They only needed to carry it out. There was no need to question it. Seeing the sword coming towards him, Pan Ning sucked in a breath of cold air. He had no weapon in his hand, so he could only retreat. However, he bumped into Hao who was behind him. Chapter 4498. Haha, come and kill him. The worst result is to drag this unlucky emperor down with you. He stared at Hao gloomily and said, "I don't know where you came from, but you broke my leg and ruined my plans. I will take revenge for this." Pan Ning and the old man stepped forward to block the door, and Lord Wu also went to help. The abbot looked at Hao and asked worriedly, "Is there any way to force that monster out of His Majesty's body?" "That's His Majesty. We can't let anything happen to him." Yu's cunning eyes turned slightly. She took out something from her body and handed it to her brother, saying, "Brother, use this. Don't take it off." Hao shouted. At the same time Yu took off the protective magic treasure on her body, the atmosphere in this side palace hall became a bit colder. Faintly, there was a bit of ghostly voice that entered their ears. "Hiss! This!" The abbot was also stunned. Even though he was the abbot of the Emperor Temple, he had never experienced such a situation. Where did those souls come from? One by one, they floated in the corner of the side palace, emitting faint sounds from their mouths. Yu also didn't expect that so many ghosts would appear when she took off the treasure on her body. She immediately put it back on. How? Er took a deep breath and said seriously to Mu Chun and Mu Yu, "Didn't I tell you to remember my words? Don't take off the things on your body. Once those ghosts get close to you, I won't know how to save you if father and mother are not here." "Brother, I'm sorry." Yu lowered her head. She didn't want to cause trouble. She just wanted to help her brother force out that golden toad demon. After all, if she had the treasure on her body, that golden toad demon wouldn't dare to attach itself to the Emperor. You have to remember that no one's life is more precious than yours. No matter what, you have to put your own safety first, Howard said. After glancing at the two, he stared at the Emperor. The next moment, he condensed a breath in his hands and attacked fiercely. The golden toad didn't even think before it tried to block the attack. However, its strength was no match for a golden core cultivator, not to mention such a small freak. In its panic, it was tied up by a rope, and its entire body was tied to the dragon throne, unable to move. "What do you want?" He stared at Howard approaching step by step and couldn't help but panic. He immediately shouted, "Guards! Help! Help!" Marquis Chi was worried that something would happen to the three children because of Pan Hong's visit, so he invited him into the palace to say a few words. One reason was that he was also curious about the three children, and he liked them. Therefore, when Pan Hong came, he agreed and went to the palace to see what was going on. Unexpectedly, when he arrived at the side chamber, he saw a group of imperial guards outside banging on the door. Inside the side chamber that was closed, the Emperor's cry for help could be heard. His face immediately changed. He strode forward and asked in a deep voice, "What happened? Who dares to kidnap His Majesty?" "My lord." When the Imperial Guard saw him, he hurriedly stepped forward. "The Pan family's second young master and the head steward are all inside. I don't know why they're holding the Emperor hostage, but the doors are locked. We're afraid that if we rush in, they'll harm the Emperor. We don't know what to do, so we asked the Marquis to decide." Chapter 4499. Hearing this, the Imperial Guard waved his hand to signal for everyone to retreat. He stepped forward and shouted, "Pan Ning, what's going on with you? Why aren't you opening the door?" "My lord, we have no intention of harming His Majesty. It's just that this matter can't be explained in a few words. In order to prevent the Imperial Guard from accidentally injuring people, we can't open the door," Pan Ning replied from inside. Looking at the Emperor who was tied to the dragon throne, he couldn't help but ask anxiously, how is it doing such a thing, even if His Majesty was possessed by an evil spirit, was still a great disrespect. He was risking the lives of the entire Pan family here. Moreover, there were ghosts floating in the air that could be seen with the naked eye. It was really frightening. "Bastard, why can't I open it? Open the door and let this Marquis in. Otherwise, you won't be able to bear the consequences of frightening His Majesty." Marquis Chi shouted from outside. Seeing that no one responded for a long time, his face darkened and he took a step back. "How many people are inside? Do you know?" he asked in a deep voice. "Not many people, other than the abbot and master of the Emperor Temple. There are 3 children, an elder Tian and Du by His Majesty's side," the Imperial Guard quickly replied. Hearing this, he pondered for a moment and instructed the Imperial Guard, "Without this Marquis' permission, don't act rashly. I'll go in and see what's going on." He didn't believe that Pan Ning was holding His Majesty hostage. The father and son of the Pan family were deeply trusted by His Majesty and could be said to be his confidants. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in such high positions. Moreover, there weren't many people in the hall. It was impossible to do such a thing in front of the abbot and the 3 children of the Emperor Temple. "The door is closed. How is my lord going to enter?" the Imperial Guard asked. Marquis Chi glanced at him, and his gaze fell on the roof of the hall that was more than 10 meters high. He immediately took a leap and quietly landed on the roof of the hall. He walked toward a small skylight above. He didn't disturb them. Instead, he bent over to see what was going on in the palace. When he saw what was going on, he couldn't help but be shocked. His expression changed drastically. The Emperor, who was tied to the dragon throne, was struggling. His face was red and ferocious. Standing in front of him was the child named Xinyuan Hao. At this time, his hands were forming some strange seals, and he was mumbling something. A breath visible to the naked, I followed his fingertips and pointed directly at the emperor's forehead. In the next moment, the shape of a golden toad faintly appeared on the emperor's body, and he let out a miserable cry. Hiss! What was going on? His eyes widened in shock. The scene in the palace had long exceeded the scope of his understanding. Ah! A shrill scream came out of the emperor's mouth. The image of a golden toad appeared on his body. Perhaps unable to bear the pain, the golden toad attached to the emperor screamed. In the next moment, a light flashed and escaped toward the palace door in front of him. Trying to escape, Howard snorted coldly. He threw out a silver net in his hand and caught the golden toad tightly. The more the golden toad struggled, the tighter the silver net became. It was so tight that bloody marks appeared on the toad's body. His Majesty, the old man quickly went forward to help the fainted emperor. He quickly untied the rope on his body and pinched his Rinzhong point, but he couldn't wake him up. Chapter 4500. However, his composure was relatively good, and he quickly calmed down. Looking at the chaotic side hall, his gaze fell on Howard, but he asked Pan Ning, what's going on? What is this thing? And those, how did it appear? Some of the Een souls floating in the corner were dressed in white, with long hair draped over their shoulders. Their faces were pale and lifeless, while others had their heads drooped, making it impossible to see their faces clearly. They let out faint voices. Even someone like him, who didn't believe in ghosts and evil, couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat when he saw this scene. There were really ghosts in this world. Why are you still here? Do you want me to destroy your souls? Howard shouted coldly. The spiritual aura on his body attacked with pressure. Those ghosts who were still floating and unwilling to leave immediately screamed and disappeared in the side hall in the next moment. As those ghosts dispersed, the cold atmosphere in the hall also eased a little. Pan Ning and the others saw this and could not help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief. After a while, Pan Ning explained simply, "My lord, the so-called immortal that His Majesty invited into the palace is a demon. He attached himself to His Majesty, and that's why the previous incident happened. I didn't expect that there are demons in this world, and it's a golden toad demon." Marquis Chi vaguely guessed something. Looking at the huge golden toad tied up in the silver net on the ground, his eyes could not help but move slightly. That silver net seemed to be a treasure. Xinyuan Hao, who was about 10 years old, was indeed not simple to be able to subdue this demon. Little immortal, His Majesty has been possessed by that demon. Will something happen to him? The old man could not help but ask worriedly when he could not wake the emperor up. He just had a few breaths of essence sucked out. He won't die, Howard said. He was about to go forward and ask where the golden toad came from when he was stopped by Pan Ning. How? Can you wake His Majesty up first? If he doesn't wake up, I'm afraid this matter can't be resolved later. Hearing this, Howard stopped and looked at Mu Chun, saying, "Chur, go and wake him up." "All right." Mu Chun responded, his little face calm. He walked up to the dragon throne, condensed a bit of spiritual energy in his hand, and pressed it between the emperor's eyebrows. After a while, the emperor woke up. "Your Majesty." Seeing this, the old man was relieved and bowed to Mu Chun gratefully. "Thank you, little immortal. What happened just now?" The emperor was stunned. He did not remember what had happened just now. He only felt that he was very weak and did not have the strength to speak. Only then did the old man tell him what had happened in a low voice. "Young almsgiver, how shall we deal with this demon?" The abbot looked at Howard and asked. He was worried that if the demon escaped, it would cause trouble everywhere. Howard didn't say anything. He just walked up to the golden toad and asked coldly, "Where did you come from to the mortal realm?" However, the golden toad didn't make a sound. It just stared at him with hatred. Seeing this, Howard turned his palm, and a sharp sword pierced into the leg that wasn't cut off. "Speak." The sharp sword pierced through, and green blood seeped out. A miserable shriek came from the mouth of the golden toad. "Ah!" Are you going to speak or not? How? Pulled out his sword and prepared to stab down again. Even the Marquis of Qi couldn't help but be startled when he saw that indifferent expression and cold gaze. Chapter 4501. When the golden toad saw that the sword was about to stab down again, it hurriedly opened its mouth and asked tentatively, "If I tell you, can you spare my life? I promise that I will leave this place and never appear in this mortal world again." If it had known that there was such a little freak in this unremarkable mortal world, how would it have dared to be so rampant here? Right now, it was scared witless by this little youth in front of it. It was terrified from the bottom of its heart. How Er's eyes flashed as he stared at the golden toad and said, "That depends on whether I am satisfied with what you say." After he finished speaking, he saw that everyone in the hall was staring at them from the corner of his eye. His heart moved, and he called out, "Chen or Yuer, come here." When the two little fellows heard this, they trotted to his side. They saw that their big brother had set up a barrier with a wave of his hand, isolating the line of sight and sound so that the people outside the barrier could not see or hear what they were saying. "Big brother, can't we let them hear?" Yuer asked doubtfully. "They are only mortals in the end. It is not good for them to know too much about cultivation." Howard looked at the golden toad and said, "You can speak now." Hearing this, the golden toad was delighted, thinking that it had won a chance of survival. It immediately said, "I am a golden toad formed after cultivating for 500 years. I snuck out from the Floating Fate Immortal Island." Floating Fate Immortal Island? Where is it? How far is it from here? Howard hurriedly asked. "That is a place isolated from a mortal world. It is a place for cultivators. I am not a flying demon, so it took me more than 2 months to come here from there." The golden toad quickly said, "However, if you have an aircraft or a flying sword, it will only take about a month to reach the Floating Fate Immortal Island from here. Moreover, I drew a map after coming out of the Floating Fate Immortal Island. If you follow the map, you will be able to reach the Floating Fate Immortal Island." It looked at Howard and begged for mercy. "I have already told you everything I know. Please spare my life. Where is the map?" Howard asked. The golden toad paused for a moment before opening its mouth and spitting out a Chinkoan bag. "The map is inside." Howard opened it and confirmed that there was a map inside. He glanced at it and kept it. He then asked, "What kind of place is the Floating Fate Immortal Island? The more you say, the more likely I am to spare your life and let you go." Hearing this, the golden toad was overjoyed. It didn't dare to hide anything and carefully told them everything it knew about the Floating Fate Celestial Island. Outside the barrier, the Emperor, Pan Ning, and the others were startled when they saw the 3 children's monster disappear into thin air. They wondered what had happened. Have they left? The Emperor asked with a frown. Looking at the figures that disappeared into thin air, he felt a little anxious. He hadn't asked the 3 children how to achieve immortality, so how could they leave? Probably not. As Chibohu spoke, he reached out his hand. He was a martial artist and was more sensitive to airflow fluctuations. At this time, even if he couldn't see, he could feel that there was something not far in front of him. Therefore, he stretched out his hand, but after touching the airflow, he was bounced back and his whole body retreated a few meters. Chapter 4502. Seeing that he couldn't see or hear anything, Marquis Qi paused and said, "Your Majesty, the Imperial guards outside are still standing guard. I'll go out and deal with them. Let them leave first." "All right, go." The Emperor leaned against the dragon throne and looked at the empty hall, waiting for the 3 children to appear. At the same time, he wondered why they used this immortal technique to conceal themselves. Could it be that there was something they didn't want them to know? As time passed, the Emperor grew impatient. He stood up and walked around a few times before sitting down again. Suddenly, an extremely unpleasant smell filled the air, causing him to cover his nose and mouth. "What's that smell?" he asked in a deep voice. Then he saw the 3 children who had originally disappeared reappear in his line of sight. And in front of them, the golden toad demon that was bound by the silver net had already turned into a pool of green blood. That foul stench was emitted from that pool of blood. You killed it? The emperor's face was filled with surprise as he looked at the cold-faced Xinyuan Hao. For what he heard earlier, it seemed that if the demon told them something useful, they wouldn't kill it. Hao led his younger brother and sister away to prevent their boots from being stained with the foul smell. When he heard the emperor's words, he looked at him coldly and said, "It was destined to die from the moment it set its sights on my younger brother and sister." In other words, he had never thought of sparing its life. When the emperor heard this, he looked at the young boy and his heart couldn't help but tremble. The young boy was warning him. "Amitba, it's good that the demon is dead. If it weren't for the young benefactor, I'm afraid no one here would be able to deal with it." The abbot stepped forward and said, seeing that the demon was dead and the matter was resolved, the identities of the 3 children could no longer be hidden. The emperor naturally wouldn't do anything to them, so he took his leave. Seeing this, the emperor let Marquis Qi leave first. After the 2 monks and Marquis Qi left, only the emperor, the old man, Pan Ning, and the 3 children were left in the side hall. Seeing that the atmosphere in the hall was a little strange, Hao looked at the emperor and asked, "Can we leave now? You still want to return to the Pan family?" The emperor glanced at the 3 of them before he glanced at Pan Ning and said, "Why don't all of you stay in the palace?" "No need." Hao-er's rejection was very thorough. He didn't give him any face at all. Seeing this, the emperor narrowed his eyes and stared at him, saying, "It's fine if you don't want to stay, but did that monster tell you where it came from? Also, there are immortals and demons in this world. Then, do you immortal cultivators also have the art of immortality?" Hao-er's heart skipped a beat. He looked at the emperor and said, "Like us, it came from the other side of the heaven realm. It's just that it came from a different place. Even immortal cultivators don't have immortality. The lifespan of immortal cultivators is just longer than you mortals. Can immortal pills and elixirs increase one's lifespan? Come back from the dead?" The emperor stared at Hao-er and said, "Since you were able to save Pan Hong back then, you naturally have an elixir of immortality with you, right? You can tell me what you want. I just want a few immortal pills." Chapter 4503. 2 pills. The emperor glanced at him, implying that 2 pills were too little. That's right, 2 pills. One is an antidote pill that can cure hundreds of poisons, and the other is a pill that can save one's life in a dangerous situation. Hao looked at him and said, "For you mortals, no matter which pill you take, other than resolving immediate danger, it is also very beneficial to your body. Even if it can increase your lifespan by 100 or 80 years, it will still increase your lifespan by a dozen years." Hearing this, the emperor's eyes flashed and his heart skipped a beat. He said, "All right, tell me, what's the condition you're talking about?" Hao glanced at Pan Ning and then said to the emperor, "The Pan family has done us a favor. The condition for giving you the 2 pills is to protect the Pan family and ensure that they have no worries for 3 generations." Hearing this condition, the emperor was a little surprised and involuntarily looked at Pan Ning. After hearing this, Pan Ning's heart trembled. He did not expect Hao to ask for 3 generations of peace for them. This was a very deep friendship. "No problem." The emperor looked at Hao and said, "The Pan family has always been highly valued by me. I can guarantee that they will have no worries for 3 generations. Even if I'm no longer around after 100 years, I will still give the order." However, when Hao heard this, he shook his head. "That's not right. It should be an imperial edict or something. After all, you are you and your son is your son. He may not necessarily do as you say." "You." The emperor glared at him. He felt that this boy did not know what was good for him. However, he did not think much of such a condition. Therefore, he said, "All right, I will give a secret edict. Let Pan Ning bring it back home. In the future, as long as the Pan family does not rebel, no matter which prince is on the throne in the future, I will guarantee that they will have no worries for 3 generations." He waved his hand and gestured for the old man to prepare. Not long after, he wrote a secret edict and stamped it. Finally, He let the old man hand it to Pan Ning. At the same time, he said to Hao, "This should be enough, right?" Pan Ning held the secret edict in both hands and stood there in a daze. He was so shocked that he couldn't react until Hao walked up to him and took the edict from his hands. He looked at it and put it back in his hands. Only then did he come back to his senses and hurriedly kneeled down. On behalf of the 3 generations of the Pan family, this subject thanks your majesty for your boundless kindness. His hands were trembling as he held the secret edict. He had never thought that he would obtain such a precious treasure on this trip to the palace. When the emperor saw Hao checking the imperial edict, he gritted his teeth and thought to himself, what kind of parents would raise such a son? How infuriating. He was the ruler of a country. Could it be that he would lie to him? He actually went to check the authenticity of the imperial edict? How annoying. All right. Get up and stand aside. The emperor waved his hand and looked at the boy. How? Then took out 2 small bottles from his space and handed them forward. He said, "These 2 pills are very precious. Even in the cultivation world, they are priceless treasures." After taking the pills, the emperor looked at the name written on the bottle and saw 2 words at the bottom of the bottle. He muttered softly, "Ghost doctor." He looked at Hao and asked, "Who is this ghost doctor?" Chapter 4504. From the moment he said those words, the emperor knew that they wanted to leave. Hearing him say this, he wasn't surprised and just nodded. "I understand." He looked at Pan Ning and said, "You take them back." "Yes," Pan Ning replied. After bowing, he left with Hao and the other 2. After watching them leave and disappear from sight, the emperor looked at the 2 bottles in his hand and sighed. "I didn't expect that on this day I would not only meet demons, but also immortals. I even obtained 2 precious pills." The old man stood quietly at the side. He didn't say anything because he knew that the emperor didn't need him to say anything. Pan Ning kept the secret edict in his arms. He felt that his steps were light as a feather. It wasn't until he left the palace and got into the Pan family's carriage that he let out a sigh of relief. He looked at the 3 children and stood up to bow to them. There were thousands of words in his mind, but in the end, he only said, "Thank you." Hao supported him and said, "There's no need for that. We're just returning the favor." The carriage went all the way to the Pan family. Pan Ning sent the 3 children back to the southern courtyard first, then hurriedly ran to find his grandfather, father, and eldest brother to tell them what had happened. In the Pan family study, when they heard Pan Ning's words and saw the imperial edict spread out in front of them, the masters of the Pan family were all shocked, speechless. They actually asked for such an imperial edict for them. This. The Pan family's patriarch looked at the imperial edict in shock. His heart was filled with indescribable gratitude and disbelief. "I didn't expect them to really be immortals. Our Pan family is so lucky," Father Pan said excitedly. Even the usually calm Pan Hong was shocked when he saw the imperial edict. To the Pan family, this imperial edict was a treasure that couldn't be any more precious. 3 generations of the Pan family would be worry-free. This was no ordinary grace. "Listen up." The Pan family's patriarch put away his shocked expression and took a deep breath. He looked at them and said, "What happened today, other than us, can't be told to anyone else. Even your wives and children can't be told. Otherwise, there might be trouble. Keep this imperial edict carefully and pass it on to the next generation." Yes, we know. They also knew that this matter was not related to the little brother. His Majesty was still on the throne, and under his protection, there was no need for them to use this imperial edict. However, the next emperor, after 100 years, might not be able to tolerate the Pan family. When that time came, this imperial edict would be a treasure that would protect the lives of the Pan family. Naturally, the fewer people who knew about this, the better. Keep the imperial edict in the secret compartment. Let's go and thank them, the Pan family patriarch said. All right, they replied. After putting away the imperial edict, they headed towards the south courtyard together. At this moment, in the southern courtyard, the 3 children were counting the treasures in their room with the door closed. Now that the golden toad demon was dead, the treasures that the golden toad demon had hidden naturally fell into their hands. Big brother, what can the knighten of this golden toad demon do? You were asked while holding a pearl with faint golden radiance in her hand. This golden toad demon's knighten has the effect of detoxification. If you take a bowl of clear water and soak this bead in it, then the water will detoxify it. How? Or said as he classified the treasures. Chapter 45:05. A smile appeared on Hao-Er's face, and he said, "Yes, I also have the same plan. In addition to this inner core, you can pick out a few more things to give to them." Okay, the two of them answered and began to seriously choose. They couldn't compare to cultivators like them. Some magic treasures and the like needed to be activated with spiritual power, and they couldn't use them. Even if they gave them to them, it would be useless. Therefore, they had to carefully choose what to give them. Young Master Hao, great-grandfather, and the others are here. 17 reported from the courtyard. Hearing this, the three people in the room looked at each other and covered the things with blankets. They shouted for 17 to invite them in and went to the outer room to open the door. The father and son of the Pan family entered the room and told 17 to stand guard outside the courtyard before closing the door. They turned around and bowed to Hao-Er and the others. "Don't be like this," the three hurriedly said and went forward to support them. "Of course, our Pan family is greatly indebted to you. This bow is necessary. Otherwise, we will feel uneasy," great-grandfather said and insisted on bowing again. Seeing this, the three children looked at each other and didn't stop them. After they bowed, they invited them to sit down. "I heard from Pan Ning that you were preparing to leave?" great-grandfather asked and looked at the three children. From the first day he saw them, he knew that they weren't simple. Later on, he personally taught them how to read and write. He discovered that these three children were extraordinary, but he didn't expect that these three extraordinary children were actually immortals. "Yes, we are preparing. We will leave in a few days." Howard said, "Where are you going? Just the three of you? Why don't I send someone to send you there? It will be safer than the three of you going on the road." Great-grandfather said. After all, in his opinion, they were still three children. "No need, great-grandfather. You and big brother are very powerful now," you said with a smile. She looked at her big brother and said crisply, "Big brother is also very powerful. Big brother will protect us." Looking at you, the expression on Hao-Er's face softened a bit, and said to them, "At that time my strength was not restored, but now my strength is restored, so there won't be any problem in protecting them." As he spoke, he looked at Pan Hong and said, "Uncle Hong, I can't treat your leg, but if there's a chance in the future, we'll ask her to treat your leg." Pan Hong didn't expect him to still remember his legs. He immediately said, "It's okay. I'm fine like this. It's just a pair of legs. It's good enough that I'm still alive." They were not from the same world as them. It was only a pair of legs. How could he dare to trouble them to come from such a faraway place to treat him? They chatted for a while in the room, then got up and left. Because they said that they were not to be disturbed during their closed-door cultivation, the Pan family also gave the order not to disturb them. In the following days, Chi-Bo, who did visit them a few times, wanted to see them. However, he returned empty-handed time and time again. Half a month later, in the morning, the three children walked out of the courtyard. Ewer said, "Big brother, let's go and say goodbye to big sister Schwerer and the others." Big brother said that they were going to leave today. They had already prepared the gifts, but before leaving, they still wanted to see their friends again. Chapter 45:06. The three of them went directly to the front yard and sat in the hall for a while. Pan family's old master and the others hurried over, followed by Bowen, Bo Ching, and Short. "Little sister Yuer, little brother Mu Chun, I haven't seen you for a long time. I missed you guys so much." Fu Qing, who looked like a tiger, saw them and jogged over to the two of them. "Why didn't you come out to play? Staying in the yard all day will make you stupid. Look, my father made me a wooden sword. It's so fun." He excitedly took out the small wooden sword from his waist and showed it to them. I can practice swordsmanship with you in the future. I've been learning swordsmanship from my father these days. Looking at the excited and happy face of Fu Qing, Yuer's face also overflowed with a smile, and her pair of beautiful big eyes blinked while looking at him. Reaching out her hand, she gestured and said with a beaming smile, "Big brother Fu Qing, you have grown taller again. Of course, I eat a bowl of rice for every meal." Bo Qing puffed out his chest and said, "Little sister are you coming to play with us today? We came to say goodbye to you today. We're leaving." Yuer said and looked at him blankly. The smile on her face disappeared, and she nervously grabbed his hand. "What? You're leaving? Why are you leaving? Where are you going? Are you really leaving? Aren't you going to stay for a few more days?" Bowen also came forward and looked at them with reluctance. "I also don't want you to leave." Shuer also grabbed Yuer's hand, her eyes red. "All right," Pan family's old master said and looked at his children. "Sit at the side." When the three children heard this, they obediently stood to the side. "We're leaving today. Big brother brought us here to say goodbye to you." Mu Chun looked at the three of them, his little face still tense. He walked forward and took out 3 jade pendants and handed them to the three of them. "This is a gift from the three of us. It's for you as a memento." When the adults of the Pan family saw this, they couldn't help but be startled. They hurriedly said, "How can we accept this? This thing is too precious." The things they gave out were definitely immortal treasures. How could the three children accept such precious treasures? Yuer said with a beaming smile, "Big brother let us pick 3 gifts to give to Big brother Bo 1, Big brother Bo Qing, and also Big sister Shuer. So Big brother and I picked these 3 pendants. Take it. It's nothing valuable." "How?" Looked at the patriarch and said, "We still have some things to tell you." Hearing this, the Pan family's father and son looked at each other. Only then did they accept the gifts for the 3 children. Then, they had them wait outside before closing the door. Hao handed over a box and said, "This is the golden toad, Demon's Nidin. Soak it in clear water, and it will cure all poisons. Keep this Nidin and don't let anyone know about it." He paused and said, "We're giving these 3 things to Bo Qing and the others. It's best to tell them not to tell anyone about it, so as to avoid unnecessary trouble." The Pan family's father and son didn't expect that they would actually give them these treasures. For a moment, they didn't know whether to accept or not. Chapter 4507. "All right, then we'll accept it. We'll take good care of this treasure. Thank you very much," the old master said solemnly and put the small box in his arms. He thought for a while and said, "The 3 of you are on the road. Even if you have good skills, I'm worried that there will be people with bad intentions. You have to have an adult by your side." He paused and thought for a while before saying, 17 has been by your side for more than a year. Why don't you let him go with you? If anything happens along the way, he can take care of it. If you reach a safe place and don't want him to stay, he can come back. If you want him to stay, he can stay by your side to take care of you." How? Thought for a while and nodded. "All right, let's let 17 follow us." When the Pan family saw this, they smiled. Pan Ning said, "I'll prepare the carriage for you." "All right," Hao replied. After he left, Fu Qing and the others ran in again. "Are you really leaving? Will you come back in the future?" Bowen couldn't help but ask. They had been with their friends for more than a year. They thought that they would grow up with them here, but they didn't expect that they would suddenly leave. "If there's a chance in the future, we'll come back," Hao said. When I become more powerful and no longer need anyone to follow me, I'll come back to see you," Yuer said with a smile. "Practice your martial arts and swordsmanship well. Don't be too weak." Mu Chen looked at Fu Qing and said, he wouldn't say that he was reluctant to part with him, but for a friend who had been with him for so long, he was still reluctant to part with him. When Fu Qing heard this, his eyes reddened and tears fell. Sob. "Don't worry, I'll definitely practice my martial arts and swordsmanship well. When we meet again, I'll be able to beat you." Mu Chen's face was tense. He glanced at his crying face and said proudly, don't think about beating me. You won't be able to. The children were talking in the hall. First Madam and Second Madam, who hadn't been called, also came in. When the butler came to inform them that the carriage was ready, and the others bid farewell to them again. Safe journey, the Pan family members said as they sent them off. After watching them enter the carriage, Pan Ning said, "There's some food in the carriage for all of you. You can eat on the way." Then, he said worriedly, 17, take good care of them on the way. They will be your masters in the future. Yes, 17 replied. He looked at the people of the Pan family and said, 17 will protect the three masters. Under the reluctant gazes of the crowd, 17 slowly drove the carriage away. Watching the carriage slowly move away until it disappeared into the street, Fu Qing pulled his father's hand and looked up to ask, "Father, will they come back? Will we see them again in the future?" Pan Ning sighed in his heart. He picked up his son and looked into the distance. They are not the same as us. Immortals and mortals were different. To be able to interact with each other for so long and form such good karma was already something unimaginable. Chapter 4508. It was also good that they left. The city was abuzz with the news. Only after they left would they be forgotten after a long time. In another world, Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu were resting by the sea. Looking at the endless sea in front of them, Fengjiu held his cheek with one hand and said, "We have almost searched this world. It seems that we have to change to another world. But this time, which world should we choose to search?" Xianyuan Mose pondered and said, "Chun'er and you were unable to awaken their contracted beasts because of the blood curse. However, has the silver wolf, and his own talent is high. Perhaps he has already broken through the blood curse and recovered. But there has been no news of them for so long. Could it be that they are unable to contact us where they are? Otherwise, with Hao Er's intelligence, he will definitely find a way to let us know where they are." "You mean could they be in the mortal world?" Fengjiu was startled and looked at him in surprise. "We can't rule out this possibility." Xianyuan Mose nodded and said, "The place that Tianjizi pointed to is a place in the lower realm. In the past 2 years, we've only searched the realm of immortals, but we've rarely checked the realm of mortals. What if they're really in the realm of mortals? With the 3 children's strength, if they go to such a place and don't have the transmission scroll with them, they can't go back to the immortal world at all." Hearing this, Fengjiu quickly took out the map to check and excluded some places. Finally, he circled an area and said, "This area is all the mortal world. It's just that the spiritual aura of this place is very weak and almost no immortal cultivators will set foot in it. However, the terrain is very wide. Even if we search one by one, I'm afraid it will take at least 2 to 3 years. Since there is a direction, we have to try no matter what. However, don't be too anxious. At least we know that the 3 children are safe now." Xianyuan Mose held her hand and said, "Yes, I know. Don't worry. It's been so long, and I've adjusted my mentality." Tianjizi also said that one day we'll meet them again. Fengjiu smiled and exhaled softly. "Yesterday, I sent a message back to my father and the others, telling them not to worry too much. My brother even asked where we are now." She paused for a moment before continuing. "I also sent a message to Du Fan and the others to return and stop searching everywhere. However, they said that they had nothing to do when they returned, so they asked me about the relevant information. I told them what Tianjizi told me, and I reckon that they will also search in this direction. Since that's the case, let's have them search the mortal realm." Xianyuan Mose looked at her and said, "With more people searching, perhaps we can find them earlier. Although you've been running around, I can see that your cultivation seems to be fluctuating." "Are you going to advance again?" Fengjiu asked. He inexplicably thought of the words that Tianjizi said the other day and felt a little worried. There are so many immortal cultivators in this world, but I've never heard of anyone stepping into the supreme level. Xianyuan Mo smiled and said, "What's more, you and I are advancing at lightning speed. Even if we're at the peak of the Divine King realm, It's not easy to step into the supreme level. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.